Welcome to Live Daf, your online Daf Yomi shir.
Shalom and welcome to today's Daf Yomi, Niddah, Daf Samaches, Amar Aleph. We're 3 lines from the top. Dorash Rav. Isha chayfefes be'erev Shabbos, v'teveles moitzei Shabbos. Rav announced the Chiddush. An Isha can do her chafifa on erev Shabbos, although she's only being tevel on motzei Shabbos. We know that an Isha needs to cleanse herself from any chatzitzos prior to going to the mikveh. And Rav was machadish. She can even do that on erev Shabbos, and although there's a large time gap that's elapsing between the chafifa and the tefillah, it's okay. Amuler popular Rav, how can you say that? Vashalach Ravin bigarte. Ravin announced with his letter, the Isha loisach ve'erev Shabbos v'titbel motzei Shabbos. A woman should not be chayfef on erev Shabbos when she's being tevel only on motzei Shabbos. It's too large of a time gap between the chafifa and the tefillah. The whole point of the chafifa is to ascertain, to be sure there are no chatzitzas there. So logic says that it needs to be done immediately preceding the tefillah. You can't do it on erev Shabbos and be tevel on motzei Shabbos. V'tamei al atzmacha. Ravin continued in his letter. Really, in reality, a person should really wonder on himself. Hey chayfefes b'yoyim v'teveles b'layla. We know that in an ordinary weekday, an isha will do the chatfifa b'yoyim, although she's only being tevel b'layla. Now Rashi explains what is the reason for this leniency. Why do we allow her to leave a time gap between the chafifa and the tefillah? Rashi says the reason is because when an isha will do the chafifa b'layla immediately preceding the tefillah, there's a concern, there's a chashash of mehuma lebeisa. Perhaps she might be doing it in a rushed manner and not properly ascertaining that there are no chatzitzes. Therefore, Chazal preferred that an isha should do chafifa b'yom, although there was somewhat of a time gap elapsing between the chafifa and the tefillah. But in reality, a person should really wonder, why is that allowed? And the reason why it's allowed is because that's the preferred method over doing it b'layla and risking a rush job. But even that's less than ideal. Hey, chayfefes b'yom v'teveles b'layla. How do we allow that to happen? Don't we need that it should be take of the chafifa tefillah? We need immediacy. We need that the chafifa should happen right before the tefillah. And the case when she's tevel b'layla and she only did chatzitza that afternoon b'yom, there is a gap of time between the two, and it's not take of the chafifa tefillah. But nevertheless, Chazal prefer this method in order to avoid the rush. But that's it. That's the maximum allowed. But certainly not to do the chafifa on erev Shabbos when she's only being tevel on motzei Shabbos. So when Rava heard this, his moida lemes, it makes sense, logical. Hadar uki Rava moirale. He appointed a speaker, and he announced again, V'dorash dvorim shamart elfneichem tos and biyadi. It was a mistake. It was an error bram. However, kach omu v'shed Rabbi Yochanan isha loisach ve'erev Shabbos v'titboil b'motzei Shabbos. It should not be done that way. A person may wonder, hey, chayfefes b'yom v'teveles b'layla, how do we allow an isha ordinarily on a weekday to do that? We don't have samuch to chafifa tvila. And therefore, we see that really, ideally, the chafifa should take place immediately prior to the tefillah to really make sure there are no chatzitzes. But certainly, we don't allow a chafifa to happen on erev Shabbos when the tefillah is taking place on motzei Shabbos, as inconvenient as it may be. We don't allow the chafifa to be done only on motzei Shabbos immediately preceding the tefillah. Concludes the Gemara. Isha chayfefes b'yom v'teveles b'layla. Ordinarily, an isha should be chayfef b'yom and be tevel that night. And like Rashi explained, there is an advantage. There is a maila to doing chafifa b'yom since she is not muhuma lebeisa, she is not rushed. V'hilchasa, another halacha. Isha loisachav ela b'layla. Isha should only perform the chafifa at night. So it seems to be a contradiction. Kasha hilchasa hilchasa. Here we're saying Isha should do the chafifa b'yom. Then we're saying Isha should do chafifa only at night. Isn't it a stira? So Timur like kasha. It's not a contradiction. Ha de efsha, ha de le efsha. One halacha is speaking when she could, an ideal situation, when she can't do the chafifa b'yom. It's an ordinary yom chayil, it's a weekday. Then certainly she should do the chafifa b'yom, although she's only being tevel b'layla. The second halacha, which proclaims, no, Isha loisachav ela b'layla, it's an absolute, only at night. That's speaking of a case, lo yevsher, when it's not possible to do the chafifa b'yom, as Rashi explains, we're speaking about a motzei Shabbos, when you cannot do the chafifa on Shabbos. In that case, an Isha should do the chafifa balayla on Matzah Shabbos, immediately preceding the tefillah, rather than doing the chafifa on Erev Shabbos. So that's why the halacha is very absolute. Lo yisachav ela balayla, because in that case of a Matzah Shabbos, it is lo yisachav ela balayla. There's no choice, there's no option of doing b'yom. She cannot do it on Shabbos, nor can she do it on Erev Shabbos. Now this was Rashi's mahalach in the Gemara. Rashi was machadish that there is a mile, an advantage to doing the chafifa b'yom, so that the Isha is not muhuma lebeisa, she is not rushed. And Rashi learned the conclusion of the Gemara, the efshar, when she can do b'yom, she should do it b'yom. The lo efshar, when she cannot do it b'yom, meaning it's a Matzah Shabbos, and she cannot do chafifa on Shabbos, in that case, she should do the chafifa b'layla. Taisus brings another sheet of the Shiltos, who learns just the opposite. Shiltos learns that it is preferred to do the chafifa b'layla. This way we ensure that there are no chatzitzas that arrive between the chafifa and the tefillah. So he learns the Gemara just the opposite. The efshar, when it is possible to do the chafifa b'layla, then you should do it only b'layla. And that's the second halacha in the Gemara. On that the Gemara says, the efshar. When she can do the chafifa b'layla, for instance, it's a Matzah Shabbos, for instance, it's a regular weekday, then certainly she should do the chafifa b'layla. However, when she cannot do it b'layla, for instance, suppose it's a Leil Shabbos, or it's a Leil Yom Tov, and she can't do chafifa at night, then in that case, she should do the chafifa b'yom. Meaning, if it's a Matzah Shabbos or a Matzah Yom Tov, she should do the chafifa on Erev Shabbos and on Erev Yom Tov. If it's a Leil Shabbos or a Leil Yom Tov, if it's a Friday night, or it's the first night of Yom Tov, in that case, she should do the chafifa on Erev Shabbos and Erev Yom Tov. So in conclusion, and on a regular weekday, we have Machlekes Rishonim. Rashi holds, better do it by day, so that you're not rushed. The Shilta says, better do it at night, so it is immediately preceding, it is takef the chafifa tefillah. On a Leil Shabbos, or a Leil Yom Tov, L'kul Yom, everybody holds, both Rashi and the Shiltas will hold that she should do the chafifa b'yom. There's no choice. Of course, she can't do it at night. If it's Matzah Shabbos or Matzah Yom Tov, in that case, everybody will hold that she should do the chafifa at night, even according to Rashi. There's no choice. There's no option of doing it b'yom. However, in the case where it is a Matzah Shabbos or a Matzah Yom Tov and it is Yom Tov, for instance, if there's a Yom Tov after Shabbos, a Yom Tov falls out Matzah Shabbos, in that case, he brings out L'kuli Alma, you may do the chafifa on Erev Shabbos. So basically we have four scenarios. An ordinary weekday, Machlekes Rishonim, Rashi holds do the chafifa b'yom, Shiltos holds do it at night. If it's a Leil Shabbos, a Friday night, or a Leil Yom Tov, when you can't do the chafifa b'layla, everybody will hold that you do the chafifa b'yom. If for some reason you can't do the chafifa b'yom, if it's a Matzah Shabbos or a Matzah Yom Tov, everybody will agree you do the chafifa at night. If, however, that Matzah Shabbos or Matzah Yom Tov is also a Yom Tov, so this won't allow the chafifa to be done b'layla. In that case, you have to go back to the Erev Shabbos or the Erev Yom Tov and perform the chafifa at that point and time. Now, in practical halacha, we try to follow both shittas. We do part of the chafifa b'yom to accommodate Rashi Shita, and we continue on to the Laila in order to be Mekayim the Shitas HaShiltis. Now the Shach brings that in a case where Isha cannot do Chafifa b'yom and she needs to do it strictly b'Laila, so there's a Takanas Marshal to prolong the Chafifa, to give it as a designated time of a Shah Achas, and this way when it is a prescribed time of doing the Chafifa, that eliminates the concern of Muhuma Lebeisa, of doing a rush job, since it is a predetermined hour, it is Shah Achas. This way, we've addressed Rashi's concern as well. Says the Mishnah, Niddah Shabbat Ka'atzma Yom Shvi Shachris Matzah Tahira. Now we know a Niddah in the time of Chazal, she would see Dam, and then she would be tummy for 7 days, regardless if she sees or she doesn't see. And at the end of the 7 days, at the Leil Shmini, at night, after the 7th day, she would be toivel and be toir again. Now, in order for that to happen, she needs to do a hefsek tahara. She needs to be mafresh tahara. She needs to remove herself from the dam. She needs to ascertain, to be mavadeh, to be boidik, to examine that her dam stopped at some point in time during the 7 days. Now, at what point of the day does she need to make that b'dika? Does she need to make it at the end of the day dafka? Or is it enough for her to make it any other time throughout the day? As well as another shaila, which day? First, second, third, seventh, is there any specification as to which day she needs to make her hefsek, her afrasha b'tahara? Says the Mishnah, Niddah shebat ka'atzma yom shvi shachris. She made her b'dika on the 7th day, shachris, the morning, u'matzah tahara, and she finds herself to be tahara. U'bein hashmashas la yifrisha. However, she did not make a b'dika. She did not separate herself from the dam at the end of the day, the bein hashmashas. Ula'acha yamim batko matzah tmeya. So during the 7th day, she made a b'dika shachris. She went to the mikveh that night, and after a while, she again found dam. Harei b'cheskas tahira. So the hafrasha, the b'dika that she did on the Yom Shvi, although it was b'shachris, it wasn't at the end part of the day, that is enough, that is sufficient to show, to prove, to ascertain that there was no more dam, and therefore when she is toivel, she's completely tor, and she's presumed to be tor, she has a cheskas tahara, and even if she'll find dam later on, it doesn't matter, the tumah will only be from then on, and not retroactive. We presume that until then, she was completely tar. However, let's say she did the b'dika the 7th day, shachris, and she finds dam, and she wasn't mafresh, she didn't do an additional b'dika at the end of the day, and she was toivel. What happened later? Later on, a couple of days later, she was baidik herself, and she finds herself to be tar. Can we assume that she was tar all along? No. We assume that she's b'cheskas tmeya. Why is that so? Because during her bedika that she did during the 7th day, she found dam. So there was no hafrasha b'tahara. There was nothing to prove that the dam had stopped, and therefore she continues to be b'cheskas tuma, even though today she found nothing. She needs to make a hafrasha b'tahara, prove that their dam doesn't exist, has stopped flowing, and then be toivel, and then she'll have a cheskas tahara. So according to Tanakama, straightforward, the 7th day, b'dikas shachris is sufficient if she finds no dam to put her into cheskas tahara. Although she finds dam later on after she's toivel, she is still considered b'cheskas tahara up until then. If, however, there was no proper hafrasha b'tahara, during the Yom HaShvi, shachris, she was b'dik and she found dam, and then she was toivel, even though later on, a couple of days later, she was b'dik herself and she found herself to be tor, that is not enough, and she is considered to continue and continues to be b'cheskas tuma until she's b'dik herself and then toivel. Now, in the Reish, in the first case, when she found herself to be tor, but later on, after the tefillah, she found dam, the Mishnah said she is b'cheskas tahara. What happens now when she finds the dam? So the Mishnah continues, umetama me'es la'es, umepkida l'pkida. She is matame retroactively, 24 hours retroactive, because of the halacha me'es la'es that we learned in the beginning of the Masechta. We're always chayshish that perhaps the dam had already exited the bayis apnimi and entered the external bayis, and that itself would already be matame the isha. So therefore, we are matame any taharis that she may be have come into contact with in the last 24 hours. Or from the time of her last bedika, from then on until now, she is presumed to be tamid. But not from the Yom HaShvi. The Yom HaShvi had already established the cheskas tahara. She is b'cheskas tahara up until the re'iyah now, but we do go back a small amount of time of me'es la'es, or mipkida l'pkida, like an ordinary isha that sees dam. V'im yesh la vest, continues the Mishnah, if she has a vest, a fixed period, then we just assume that the dam came now, and it is enough to be matami her from now on. We don't go back in time at all. So this is the Shittas Tanakama, that a b'dika, a hafrasha b'tahara b'yom hashvi, even if it's shachris, it is sufficient to be considered a b'dika, a hafrasha, a hefsek tahara, and she is full-fledged cheskas tahira. Rabbi Yehuda Aimer, kol shalei hafrisha b'tahara min ha-mincha u'lamayla harizu b'cheskas tameya. It is not enough for the isha to make her b'dika b'shachris. She needs to make a b'dika min ha-mincha u'lamayla, meaning from the zman of mincha katana, 2.5 hours before shkia, until the end of the day. That is a window of the b'dika, meaning she can't make a b'dika shachris and presume that she's completely tar. She needs to wait till the latter part, the seif hayoim. Only then can she make a proper hefsek tahara and prove and be mavade and ascertain that she has no more dam. V'chachamim oimrim afilu b'shnayim l'nidasa batka matzah tahira. Even the second day of her niddas, meaning the Chacham Basroi, the last shita of the Mishnah, is being machadish above and beyond of the shitas Tanakama. Tanakama said, B'yei Mashvi, the 7th day Shachris, you can make a hefsek tahara. The Chacham coming to machadish, even on the second day you can do the same thing. You can make a b'dikas Shachris, that will be considered a proper hefsek tahara. Again, Chacham Ma'imim, afilu b'shnayim l'nidasa, batko matzah tahira, u'ben hashmashas lo yefrisha. She did only a b'dikas Shachris, without a b'dikas ben hashmashas. So she goes and she makes a hefsek tahara the second day of her niddas. She makes a hefsek tahara b'shachris without adding any hefsek tahara ben hashmashis. And after the 7th day, she goes to the mikveh. A while later, she finds dam. She's matzah dam. We assume that she's becheskas harizu, becheskas tahara. The bedika that she made b'yem hasheni b'shachris is enough, is sufficient to establish a proper cheskas tahara, and she is tar up until the point that she'll say down. So in conclusion, we have 3 shitas in the Mishnah. We have the shitas Tanakama, that b'dikas yoim hashvi shachris is sufficient. We have a shitas of Yehuda, that you require a b'dika bein hashmashes. Now, the Gemara later on seems to imply that according to Rabbi Yehuda, a b'dikas ben hashmashas specifically b'yoyim hashvi. It needs to be done dafka on the 7th day. So it's 2 chumras. The Chacham Basroi, the last sheet of the Mishnah, holds that even the yoyim sheni is enough, and even if it's only a b'dikas shachris. 3 shitas: yoyim sheni shachris, yoyim shvi shachris, or yoyim shvi ben hashmashas. Says the Gemara, Itmar Rav Amar Zava Vadai. Now this is going back on the first part of the Mishnah. If an Isha is mafresh with Tahara, she does a proper hefsek Tahara, but she finds dam. So we say that it doesn't determine that she's Tahira and she's becheskas Tumah. And even afterwards, if she goes and she finds herself Tahira, she's Toivel and she finds herself Tahira, it is not enough, and she is still becheskas Tumah. The question remains, is this a definite tumah? Is this considered a vadai, or is it only a suffix? Meaning, is she considered to be a zava vadai? Because let's recall, we're speaking about after the Yimei Niddah and Tvila. Now she's already in the Yimei Haziva. If we're chayshish, if we're concerned that she saw dam, she's considered to be a zava. But is it a vadai? Do we assume that she certainly is a zava, or is it only a possibility? Itma, Rav Amar Zava vadai, V'levi Amar Zava suffix. If she sees dam later on, according to Rav, she's a vadai zava, she's a definite zava. According to Rabbi, according to Levi, she's only a suffix zava, a possibility. Says the Gemara, hi. In which case, in the Mishnah, are they arguing? Ilema Reisha, referring to the Reisha, the first part of the Mishnah, when she did a bdika, she found no dam, and the Mishnah says that she's becheskas tahara, and even if she'll see dam later on after the tefillah, she's considered to be becheskas tahara up until that point in the day. Harezu becheskas tahara ktani. There's no issue there. She's becheskas tahara. It doesn't apply any sveikas, any machlekes, any zavas here. She's becheskas tahara. Ella Seifa, rather, the machlekes Rav and Levi is referring to the Seifa of the Mishnah. What does it say in the Seifa of the Mishnah? If she attempted to do a bedika and she found dam, she's considered to be becheskas tumah, even if later on after tefillah she finds no dam. She is still considered becheskas tumah until that point. Now, we have a machlekes Rav and Levi. Is she becheskas tumah, meaning she's definitely tummy? She's considered a zava vadai. She's being a carbon like any ordinary zava. Or is it merely a possibility? We're concerned perhaps she might be a zava, she might have seen dam in the Yimei Haziva. Says the Gemara, Bishlam, it's all good and well, suffix zava amrinan. Okay, you want to suspect she's a possible zava, fine. Ela zava vadai, how could you say that she's a zava vadai? Ela zava vadai nami haribat kamatzah Torah. How can you say that she's a zava vadai in the case where she didn't do a proper hefsek tahara, and later on she found herself to be tar, so the Mishnah says she's considered to be bechazkas tuma, since she didn't do a proper hefsek tahara. Fine, so we're chayshish that she's seen dam. But since she didn't find dam today, how could you go ahead and establish definitely that she's a zava vadai? There's no dam here. She's tar. How can there be possibly a shita saying that she's a zava vadai in that case? Ella, you must say ki itmar the Rav Levi. You must say that the machlekes Rav Levi is shmaita ba'a b'nafshi itmar. There's a case on its own. They're referring to a case which is actually not explicitly mentioned in the Mishnah. What's the case? Niddah shabat ga'atzmi mashri shachris amatza tmeya niddah that attempted to make a hefsek tahara. She was boiling herself the 7th day shachris. She found dam. Uben hashmashas lo yifrisha. That ben hashmashas she did not do a hefsek tahara. She was toivel. A couple of days later, she went and she found dam. She matzah tmeya. Then we have grounds to be chayshish. We have grounds to suspect that perhaps there was dam all along. Look, during the hefsek tahara that she attempted, she found dam, and a couple of days later, she again found dam. Do we assume that there was dam all along, that she had re'iyos all along, and then in that case she's a vadei zava, or perhaps it's only a suspicion, it's only a possibility, it does not render her a vadai zava. Rav Amar zava vadai, V'levi Amar zava safek. Why? Rav Amar zava vadai, kivan demikar nimses tmeya, since initially, during the hefsek tahara, she was found to be tamei. Now again, she found tmeya vadai. So we connect the dots, the tumah of the Yom HaShvi together with the tumah today, we assume that was just an ongoing occurrence and there was dam all along, and therefore she's a vadai tmeya. V'levi Amar, no, safek zava, it's only a possibility. Why? Eima paska beini beini. Perhaps she stopped seeing dam in between the first riyah and the current riyah. V'chein tana Levi masnisa. So too Levi added in his brayso, he added to the Mishnah, meaning to the latter part, to the seif of the Mishnah. The Mishnah says that an isha that attempted to do a hefsek tahara during the Yom HaShvi and found dam, and after a while she didn't find dam, she's v'chaskas tuma. But if she found dam, then she is v'chaskas tuma, but it's only a safek zava. After these days, meaning after she made a hefsek tahara and she found dam, and after a couple of days, bein batko matzah tahira, whether she was boidik and she found no dam, bein batko matzah tmeya, whether she was boidik, she did find dam. In both cases, harezu safek zava. So according to Levi, this case was explicitly stated in the Mishnah. Levi added this case to the Mishnah. According to Levi, there are 3 cases mentioned in the Mishnah. The first case in the Mishnah was when the hefsek tahara was successful. She found no dam. She is b'cheskas tahara, and although she finds dam later on, she's still considered to be b'cheskas tahara from the hefsek tahara up until today. And now it's a new re'iyah. Mishnah continues and says she's mitam meis leis, mipkida lepkida, as an ordinary issue sees dam, because the hefsek tahara provided her with that cheskas tahara. The second halacha in the Mishnah says that if an isha does find dam during the hefsek tahara, in that case she's presumed to be tamei, she's becheskas tmeya. So then, even though she's toivel, but later on, whether she finds dam, whether she doesn't find dam, in both cases she's becheskas tuma, but merely a safek zava. Now Tosfos Rosh asks on Rav, how could Rav say that she's a vadei zava? Since we're speaking about the Yemei Ziva here, the days that it's pretty unusual for an isha to see dam, how could Rav say that she's a vadei zava and go bring a karban? Perhaps she's not really a zava and you're risking bringing a chulin, a non-karban la'azara. So the Tosfos Rosh remains with a kasha. So perhaps that is really the svara, that is the rationale to Levi's shita. Levi holds, being that we're speaking about, the discussion here is regarding the Yemei Ziva, where it's unusual for Isha to see dam. She's bechaskas tahara. The Mishnah stated earlier that during the Yemei Ziva, Isha has called the Aleph Yomim bechaskas tahara, and Isha is presumed to be tar. It is not the usual occurrence for Isha to see dam in those days, and therefore, even though we're speaking about that there was no proper hefsek tahara, nevertheless, she could not be considered to be a vadai zava, although there was no hefsek tahara done, and although now she's seeing dam again, we cannot necessarily presume that there was dam coming all along, since we're speaking about the Yemei Ziva, where Isha has a cheskas tahara. Continues the Gemara. Umetama me'es leis. An isha that did perform a successful hefsek tahara, she is becheskas tahara. She was toivel. Later on, she sees dam again. She's metame me'es leis retroactively 24 hours. For the Gemara, leima tehavet yufta de Rava. It seems that this is a kasha, this is a refutation to Rava's shita. The Amar Rava loimar she'ne isha metame me'es leis b'tzoichim ezivasa. Rava learns that an isha is becheskas tahara during her yimei ziva, and even if she does see dam, it's an unusual occurrence. She is not metame retroactively at all. So the Mishnah by us, which is discussing the yimei ziva, and the Mishnah says if an isha sees dam during those yimei ziva, she's metame me'es leis, seems to contradict Rava's halacha. Ask the Gemara, "V'lav v'svine l'Rava chadazimna." Haven't we already asked on Rava one time? So why is it necessary to ask again? Says the Gemara, "Hachi kamrinan." This is what we need to say. Leima tahavet yufta de Rava nami miha. Perhaps this Mishnah is an additional stira refutation to Rava's shita. Perhaps if you have a teretz on the first kasha, so we'll have another kasha on Rava from this Mishnah. Is that so? Says the Gemara, no, not necessarily. Amlach Rava ki ktani metame me'es leis areish pirkin koi. When the Mishnah speaks about tumas me'es leis, it's not speaking about a zava during the yimei ziva. An isha during the yimei ziva. She has we have no reason to believe that there's dam there. She's fully becheskas tahara. The Mishnah, however, is referring to a case, areish pirkin koi, we're speaking about a tenoikos, a young girl, who arasa v'oide b'veisavia. She saw dam when she was still at home, and then the Mishnah goes on to say that if she gets married and there's dam during the first bia, we assume that it's dam basulim, and it is not dam bia. Now afterwards, we assume the dam is dam bia, but there would be reason to believe that perhaps, being that she's only a tenoikos, she's not of age yet. In that case, I would say since some time passes with no dam, so although now she again finds dam, I would assume that perhaps it is an unusual thing and she has a din of absulas damim, as discussed earlier in the Masechta, and there is no din of me'es le'es applied in that case. Sal kedai techamina, I would perhaps think, kiva de mafsiklu yamim tahirim, since there are clean days, there are yamim tahirim in between the re'iyah of the dam basulim and now. So I would think perhaps she's going back to her old state of absulas damim when she is not of age yet, she's not of nature to see dam. I would think that she has a din of absulas damim, an isha who has not yet come of age to see dam. And we learned earlier in the Masechta that such an isha, a young girl who is not of age to see dam, when she does see dam, there is no halacha of me'es leis applied. She is not metame retroactively, only mikan ve'elach, only going forward. So perhaps I would entertain such a havamina kamash malon. So the Mishnah is teaching us, informing us that is not so. Even a tinoikos will have the din of me'es leis. But the bottom line is that the Mishnah is not discussing an isha seeing dam during the yemei ziva, and therefore it's not a contradiction to Rava's halacha that a isha be yemei zivasa is considered b'cheskas tahara, and even when she does see dam, she is not metame me'es leis. Continues the Mishnah, em yeish lavest, if an isha, we're discussing an isha again during the yemei ziva, that we presume that she doesn't see dam, then she's b'cheskas tahara, and if she does see dam, if the dam happened bizman vesta, when she had a fixed period, that during the time of her vest, she is not metame me'es leis. We have the din of daya sha'ata, which is only metame from that point going forward. Ask the Gemara, neima to have it yufta rafuna rachia mashmul. It seems like this halacha in the Mishnah, that an isha during the yemei ziva has a din of kviyas vest, would seem to contradict the halacha of Rav Huna Rachia Mashmol. The Rav Huna Rachia Mashmol loymar she'ena isha kavas lavest v'mezivasa. He explains the Mishnah we mentioned earlier, which says kol achad asar b'cheskas tahara, that an isha during the 11 days of Yemei Ziva is considered to be b'cheskas tahara. So Shmuel interprets the Mishnah, explains the Mishnah to mean that during those days an isha cannot be kaveya a vest, since it is unusual for her to see during those days. Therefore, the halachas of kviyas vest don't apply then. Our Mishnah seems to say that even during the Yimei Ziva, the halachas of Ves Kavua are applied. Seems to be a stira on his halacha. Answers the Gemara, Amalach Rav Huna bar Chia, Ki Amrinan, Ein Isha Kavas Lavest Yimei Zivasa. When do we say this halacha? That an Isha is not Kaveh Vest during the Yimei Zivasa? That is referring to the halacha of the Leibayat Lasa Zimna L'Mayakar. We don't require 3 times to uproot it. Meaning, ordinarily when an Isha has a Ves Kavua, when she sees 3 times consecutively on a specific day, that is considered a Ves Kavua, and every time that day rolls around, v'choshish, that perhaps she'll see Dam during that day, she needs to perform a Vedika, she's not Baidik, she is presumed to be Tameh, and that Ves Kavua remains intact, remains in place, until she uproots it 3 times, thereby nullifying bimavatel the Ves Kavua. However, an Isha during the Yimei Zivasa, since it's unusual for her to see Dam during that time span, therefore even if she's Kaveya, she establishes a Ves 3 times, and that is considered a Ves Kavua, she doesn't need to be Aikarit, she doesn't need to uproot it 3 times in order for it to become this battle. 1 time is enough. So basically what he's saying is that it is a kula. This that we say that an Isha B'Yimei Zivasa will not have the halach of the Kriyas Vest, that's referring to a kula, meaning we're lenient. Since it is unusual, it is not the typical Zman Riyas Dam, therefore the Kviyas Vest that happened during that time span is not really a bona fide Kviyas Vest, and can be Aiker, can be Nekar, much easier. However, it's not to say, that is not to mean that she can't be Kaveya Vest during that time. Certainly, she could be Kaveya Vest even during the Yimei Zivasa, and that is what the Mishnah is referring to. So it's not a kasha on Shmuel at all. Again, what do we mean? We don't require 3 times of uprooting that day, meaning for her to see 3 times during a different day, thereby uprooting the vest. That is not required. It is not a typical time. It is not considered a Zman Riyah. Since the damim are virtually non-existent during that period, during that time span, during the Chad Asar Yimei Ziva, therefore it is much easier to be Eiker Ves Kavua, and even if that day rolls around again, if she was Eiker merely once, it is considered sufficient to be Eiker that vest, and we're not concerned with Dam arriving during that day. But, however, if she does see Dam during that day, it is considered Daya Shaita, since it certainly is considered a Ves Kavua as long as it was a Nekar. So in conclusion, during the Achada Asar Yimei Ziva, Nisha certainly can be Kaveya a Ves Kavua. And if she sees Dam during that day, during the expected time, during the fixed period, the day that we expect Dam to come, certainly we assume Daya Shaita, we give her Tumah only going forward. We're not Chayshish, we don't suspect 24 hours going back, since it is a Ves Kavua. This that Shmuel said that Isha cannot have a din of Ves Kavua during the Yimei Ziva, that is only referring to a Kula, a leniency. It means to say that she could be Eiker, a Ves Kavua, that was established during the Yimei Ziva, she could be Eiker much easier than an ordinary Ves Kavua. All that is required to be Eiker that vest is a one-time Akira. One time she sees a different day, that already is enough, is sufficient to be Eiker, the vest Kavua that was established during the Yimei Ziva. Continues the Gemara. Rabbi Yehuda holds that she needs to do a Bedika ben Hashmashes of the 7th day. Tanya, Amrulay Rabbi Yehuda. The Chachamim challenged Rabbi Yehuda. How could you require that an Isha should make her Hefsek Tahara specifically Dafka ben Hashmashes of the 7th day? Meaning, the last part of the day, the end of the day, she has to go ahead and make a Bedika, and that will determine that there's no more Dam. Ilmala Yodea Munachais Beinea Kalaven Hashmashes. If you would require, if the case would be that she has her hand placed in her eyes, the whole Ben Hashmashes, it is a mashal for performing a proper Bedika straight throughout the whole Ben Hashmashes, from beginning of the Ben Hashmashes till the end of the Ben Hashmashes, then certainly you can assume that she's clean, that she has no Dam. We will agree, it would be logical, it would make sense that is the best way to ascertain, to establish that there's no Adam. If you would require a complete Bedika all throughout the complete Zman of Ben Hashmoshes. Achshav, however, now, that even you're not requiring a Bedika throughout the whole Ben Hashmoshes. It is sufficient for her to make a Bedika, meaning at the end of the day, last moment of the day. She doesn't need to make an ongoing Bedika. So what have you gained? If you're suspecting that after her Bedika, there might be another Riyas Dam, therefore you disagree with the Tanakama. You hold it's not enough to make a Bedika Shachris. What's the point of Bedika Shachris? She'll see Dam later on throughout the day. Therefore you require to make a Bedika. But what gain do you have from making a Bedika if a couple of minutes later she can go see Dam again? Achshav, now that you require Bedika Ben Hashmoshes, Ema im Silika de Arasa. Perhaps as soon as she removed her hand, now she saw Dam. What difference does it make to make a hafrasha, a hefsek tahara on the seventh day, last part of the day? What is the difference between doing a hafrasha, a hefsek tahara, the seventh day, the latter part of the day? What is the difference between that and doing the first day in the morning? What's the difference? Either way, you're not ascertaining 100% that there's no more dam. Ask the Gemara, what do you mean Barishan? We have a problem with the wording of the Chachamim. Chachamim say, what's the difference between the seventh day of Ben Hashmoshes, of Ben Chalmaila, and the first day of her Niddah? 1 second. There's no Shita that allows a B'dika on the first day. How can you allow a B'dika on the first day? The Tanakama allowed the seventh day. The Chachamim in the Mishnah allowed the second day. There's no Shita that allows the first day, which is the first initial day of her Iyaz Dam, her source, her Mayan is still Pasua. How can you even entertain such a possibility? Ask the Gemara, Barishan, Mi'ikil Man Omar, is there anybody that holds that she can do a Hefsek Tahara on the first day? Ask the Gemara, yes, we found such a Shita. Vatani, you've learned in the Braisa, Amar Rebbe, Sha'alti is Reb Yosi, Reb Shimon, Kshalim Malchim Aderech. I asked Reb Yosi and Reb Shimon when they were traveling on the road, Niddah Shabbat Ka'atzma, Yoim Zayin Shachris, Umatzah Tahira. An Isha that was baidik herself the seventh day in the morning, and she found herself to be Torah. Ubein Hashmoshes lo yifrisha, and she did not do a hefsek tahara, afrasha. Bein Hashmoshes of that day, and she was toivel ula achar hayomim. Later on, Batka Matzah Tameya, she found Dam out. What is the halacha? Is a bedikas shvi in the morning sufficient? Amrli harizu b'cheskas tahara. Yes, it is enough to conclude that she's b'cheskas tahara, and it is considered a kosher, satisfactory hefsek tahara. Shishi, Chamishi, Revi, Shlishi, Sheni, Mai. What if she does it on the 6th day, and the 5th day, and the 4th day, and the 3rd day, and the 7th day? Is that also considered to be a proper, halachically valid hefsek tahara? Amrli Leishna, there's no difference. Varishan Leishalti, concludes Rebbe, I didn't go ahead and ask them about the first day. I figured first day is already going too far. You can't allow a hefsek tahara on the first day, so I didn't want to push that far. I stopped at the second day. But apparently I've erred. I made a choice. I should have asked regarding the first day as well. Why is that? Are the rest of the days, the 2nd through the 7th, aren't they all considered b'cheskas tuma? She's considered to be presumed to have dam. V'chivan the pasak. However, once she makes a bedika and she finds no dam, she sees that the dam stopped. So although there was a cheskas tuma, the bedika removes the cheskas tuma. Now she's considered to be b'cheskas tahara. So too, Rishon Nami, what's the difference between the 2nd, the 3rd, the 4th, and the first day? Given the pasak, once she sees there's no more dam, the dam stops, she stops. So therefore, there really essentially is no difference between the first day and the other days, and therefore, it would seem that the same heter of making hafrasha b'tahara on the 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th, or 7th would apply to the first day as well. She can do a hafrasha b'tahara on the first day, shachris. It says the Gemara, Mikara myself. Initially, what did Rebbe hold? That he did not, that he avoided the first day. Rebbe figured since on the first day the source, meaning the flow is pasuach, it's open, it's so close to the initial Mayan till Psichas HaMayan, the beginning of her Riyah. Therefore, there's no room to think that she can already make a hefsek tahara b'yom rishon shachris. So, in conclusion, Rabbi holds, according to the Rabbi Yossi, Rabbi Shimon, that you can make a hefsek tahara even on the first day shachris. So, to summarize the shittas in the Gemara, we seem to have 4 shittas. 3 mentioned in the Mishnah, and an additional shita mentioned in the Brisa in the Gemara. Tanakama holds you can make a hefsek tahara Yom Shvi Shachris. The Rabbi Yehuda holds Yom Shvi Min HaMincha L'Mayla Dafka. Chachamim in the Mishnah hold you can make a B'dika on the second day Shachris. And Rebbe in the Gemara is Machadash, even on the first day Shachris you can make a hefsek tahara. Let's see the Mishnah. Hazav v'hazava shabatku atzum b'yom rishon u'matzu tahar. Now Azav and Azava need to do Sfira Shiva Nekiyim. They have to count 7 days without any riyos, and then go to the mikveh, and there's a whole procedure. However, if they were only baidik partially, they were baidik, say the first day, it was okay, matzah tar, they found nothing, they were tar, or b'mashvi u'matzah tar, so they counted only the first and the 7th, they were baidik only on the first and the 7th. Ushar yamim sheben time loy batku, they didn't do a b'dika on the rest of the days. So we have 3 shittas. Reb Lezer Imarei Mecheskas Tahara. The B'dika on the 1st and the 7th is sufficient to consider them to be B'cheskas Tahara, and nothing more is required. Rabbi Shua Imer Ein Lahem Elo Yom Rishon V'Yom Shvi B'Levad. It is considered as if they only counted 2 days, the 1st and the 7th. The days that they actually performed the B'dika, that counts on the Cheshbon. That can be calculated. So they all have 2 days, they have to continue to count another 5 to complete the 7. Rabbi Kiva Aimer, Eilem Elal Yom Zayin Bilvad. The days before the 7th get cancelled, Rechoshesh were concerned there was a Re'iyah in between the 1st and the 7th, and therefore it invalidates it, it's Mavatal it, and they have to start fresh. They only have the 7th day, and they have to count another 6 to complete their calculation of 7 days. 3 shittas in the Mishnah, in the case where Azav and Azava will bite the 1st and the 7th. According to Reb Lezer, it is fully sufficient. It is considered to be a b'dikas Shiva Yamim. According to Rabbi Yeshua, it is only b'dikas Rishon and Shvi. They have to complete it by counting another 5 days. According to Rabbi Kiva, it is only b'dikas Yom Echad. He only has the b'dika of the 7th day to count for the cheshbon of Shiva Nikim. Says the Gemara, Tanya Amar of Lezer Yeshua. How could you say that the 1st and the 7th count? If we're concerned that there was a re'iyah in between the 2 days, so the halach is, if a Zav and a Zava had a re'iyah somewhere in the 7 days, it totally invalidates it. It's mevatel, the complete cheshbon, and they have to start again. So how can you say that the 1st and the 7th are counted together? If there was a re'iyah somewhere in between, say on the 3rd day, that would be mevatel the 1st day. Tanya Amar of Lezer Bishua Lidvarecha, according to Yoshita, Atamoyne B'Serugin. You're counting discontinuously. Vatayra Amra Achar Titar. She can only be tar after Achar Lekulan, after all 7 days, Shaloi Teitumim Hafsekas B'Neim, without any interruption. Meaning all 7 days are considered to be one unit. They're a singular unit. You can't be mafsik in between them. It's only if it's a consecutive 7 days, that's when it's considered to be Shiva Nakim. So if you're concerned that there was a re in between, that invalidates the 1st day. Amle Rishua, Va'ata Moide. You don't admit to me. You're not Moide B'Zav Shor Keri. If a Zav, during his Shiva Nakim, seen a Keri, that is not a Ziva, that is a Keri, that is a different type of Re'iyah, that is a more lenient Re'iyah. So in that case, we learn from a Pasuk that it's only Mavatal that day, and the other days still count, still stand. So aren't you moided that in that case it is discontinuous, it is b'seirugin? Another example, Ubin Nazir, shehilech schachos afrois, Nazir can become tummy, and he walked under a schachos, that is a overhang of branches, a prois, those are stones that are protruding from a wall, and he walked underneath them, and there is a suffix, there is a chashash, that there is a mace underneath them, and he walked into the oil hamace. It is a suffix oil hamace. So in that case, the Gemara is going to explain later that it's only a derabanan. It's only a tumah derabanan. So in that case, the Chacham said you have to skip over that day, meaning you can't count. The Niddah needs to count 30 days for his naziros. You can't count the days of tumah that happened through becoming tameh with a schachais or frois. So in that case as well, you're counting v'sirugin. You're counting the days prior to his schachais or frois, and you're adding it to the days that he counted afterwards, and it is not one continuous counting. He's counting b'serugin. When a nazir becomes tummy, everything falls down, meaning you're mevatel the whole counting, the whole calculation. You can't count discontinuously. So you're masking two cases where discontinuous counting is allowed. So in this case as well, in our Mishnah, you can be maider b'serugin, it's okay. For Rabbi Lezer counters, no. All is well over there. And a zav who saw a carry, there's a chiddush hakra, teres mechadish. When there's a re'iyah of a carry, it only says her, you only dissolve that day, and we leave the other days intact. Elamai, you have a question that perhaps it can create a confusion. Somebody, an observer, will say, well, you see that even if there's a re'iyah during the shiva in a kiyam, you can still count the other days. Perhaps it can create a confusion. Zav balkari loy michlav. A zav that saw a re'iyah zoiv during a shiva nekiyim, in that case, the shiva nekiyim become nizbatel. We will not confuse it, will not become nischalef with a balkari who merely saw keri, where in that case the Torah specifically says he's only being mevatel the day of the keri and not the other days. Those two cases are not confusable, they're not interchangeable, and there's no chashash, concern for confusion. As well, in the case of a nazir, it's also okay. Nazir shehilach al gabi tzchachar surprise nami miday rice oil ma'al yubinyan. Now Torah, in order for a nazir to become tummy, you need a proper oil where there's a vaday mace. In this case, it's only the rabbanon. V'rabbanon who the gazer, it's exer the rabbanon. V'rabbanon with the rice michlav. There's no room for confusion. It's an exceptional case. It's a specific type of oil of a schachar, of a price. It's not the typical type of a tent of a house where the oil is mitame midaraisa. Therefore, the Chacham have room to be lenient and to allow him only to mevatel, not to count that day, the day of the tumah, the days that he is tummy, but to still continue counting from where he left off, and now to be mevatel all the yemei hanaziris that were counted before the tumah. So these two cases are really exceptions. Aval hacha, in our case, where Zav is trying to count the shiva nekiyim, and he only counted the first and the seventh, and there's a concern to the chashash that he saw ziva during the 7 days that he wasn't counted, during the day that he hadn't counted. So if you're chayshish, you're concerned, you Rabbi Shua, who only wants to count the first and the seventh for his for his shiva nekiyim, you want to be chayshish, you're concerned that during between the first and the seventh there was a re'iyah. If you're chayshish that he saw besafik, a person, an observer, will say, well, you know why we're not counting the middle days? Because there was a re'iyah of a zayiv. So the fact that you're allowing the first and the seventh to stay intact will be room for confusion that an observer might deduce from there that even a zav who actually sees ziva during a shiva nekiyim, it doesn't make the shiva nekiyim nizbatel, and everything remains intact. So you can't allow that to happen. Therefore, I disagree with your shita, and the comparison to a zav seeing a keri or a nazir under the schachas surprise is not a proper comparison. Says the Gemara, Tani Rabbi Yosef Shimon Amri, near and Divrei Rabbi Lezer and Divrei Yeshua. It seems that the shita of Rabbi Lezer is more correct than the shita of Rabbi Yeshua, meaning that the fact that there was a b'dikas rishon and a b'dikas shvi, that is sufficient to be considered b'cheskas tahara, and no more is necessary. However, the shita of Rabbi Akiva, who says that he only has a 7th day to count for himself, everything else becomes his battle, because we're chayshish that there was riyah, that is actually preferred. This shita is actually preferred over the other shitas. However, we pass on Rabbi Lezer that the zav and the zava are considered to be b'cheskas tahara by merely doing a b'dikas rishon or shvi. It's completely considered like a b'dika shiva nekiyim, a sphere shiva nekiyim, and he's completely eligible to become tar. So in conclusion, we have 3 shitas in the Mishnah: a case where a zav and a zava did not perform shiva nekiyim, b'dika shiva nekiyim consecutively. However, he did a b'dikas rishon and a b'dikas shvi. According to Rabbi Lezer, he is considered to be baduk. He is b'cheskas tahara, is sufficient, and that's how the Gemara concludes. According to Rabbi Shua, he only has the 1st and the 7th. He has to complete the shiva nekiyim by adding another 5 days. According to Rabbi Akiva, he only has the 7th day to count for himself. He needs to add another 6 to complete his shiva nekiyim.